The U.S. House held a hearing on workers' compensation for federal workers, where Republicans said the benefits were, quote, overly generous. Brian Renfro spoke in support.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Last Week in Southern Labor is a segment that we do every week where we take a look at what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to. Here's what they were up to from May the 2nd to the 9th. In new union campaigns, 150 security guards for Paragon Systems in Houston, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Government Security Officers of America, UGSOA, Local 333. 746 workers at Brilliant Corporation in Lee's Summit, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 3 workers at IMI Edmonton in Edmonton, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 89. 14 workers at Quest Diagnostics in Marietta, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 728. 46 workers at Compass Behavioral Services in Richmond, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Teamsters, Local 322. 6 workers at Feldkamp Mechanical in Lexington, Kentucky, filed a petition to hold a union election with the United Association of Plumbers and Steamfitters, UA, Local 452. 12 workers at Starbucks in Richmond, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United. In campaign updates, the United Auto Workers, UAW, continue their push to unionize the Kentucky Blue Oval SK plant. The Courier-Journal has a profile of the safety problems in the plant, finding chemicals, mold, broken bones, and retaliation for reporting safety concerns. The UAW responded to the story in a statement saying that Ford, which is one of the companies in the joint venture establishing Blue Oval, should know better. In election results, 18 workers at Starbucks in Lawrenceville, Georgia, voted 4-12 against unionization with Starbucks Workers United. That is the first such lopsided loss for the union that I've seen in this campaign, I think. Really bad news, but there is going to be a union election at Starbucks in Huntsville next week. Hopefully that one will go better. 92 workers at the Bluegrass Energy Cooperative Corporation in Nicholasville, Kentucky, voted 32-10 in favor of unionization with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 2100. 13 workers at Hydro Evac in McDonough, Georgia, voted 10-2 in favor of unionization with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 926. 6 workers at Pye Barker Fire and Safety in Richmond, Virginia, voted 3-2 in favor of unionization with the UA's Road Sprinkler Fitter, Local 669. 18 workers at Diversicare of Pell City in Pell City, Alabama, voted 13-5 in favor of unionization with the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, RWDSU. 6 security guards at Secure Remedy in Washington, D.C., voted 1-0 in favor of unionization with the National Capital Union for Security Officers. 51 workers at Goodrich Corporation in Jacksonville, Florida, voted against unionization with the IAMAW. 14 workers at Newbold Services in London, Arkansas, voted 8-0 in favor of unionization with the Labor's International Union of North America. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, a federal district judge in Rhode Island issued a preliminary injunction against the closure of the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, FMCS, as well as the Minority Business and Development Agency. The FMCS is particularly important for unions because it has provided mediation services during contract negotiations and grievance procedures for decades. It was founded in 1947, so the courts stopping the disassembly of that agency is really important. The Federal Education Association, FEA, an NEA affiliate, which represents educators at DoD schools, filed their own lawsuit against Trump's executive order banning collective bargaining for most federal workers.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
In strikes and bargaining updates, the U.S. Department of Labor is ending mental health care and child care services for its own staff. The union plans to file a grievance alleging this violates the contract and multiple executive orders. UPS said in an earnings call that they will be laying off 20,000 workers in response to anticipated lower volume from Amazon because of tariffs. The Teamsters hit back strongly, saying there will be a fight if the company comes after union jobs. National Nurses United members, NNU, in Asheville, North Carolina, held a rally to demand improvements to their health care. Communication Workers of America, CWA members at AT&T Southwest ratified their new 4-year collective bargaining agreement, which includes an immediate 5% raise and a 15% raise over the life of the 4-year contract. CWA also says this contract includes the first reduction in health care costs in 15 years. In political and legislative updates, a new postmaster general has been selected. David Steiner, a board member of FedEx, postal unions like the NALC and APWU, issued statements condemning the move as a step towards privatization. Trump announced more tariffs, this time on foreign films. IATSE and the Teamsters issued statements of support. The UAW released a report explaining how U.S. automotive manufacturers could ramp up domestic production in response to tariffs. Coal miners for decades have been able to get free black lung screenings from the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, but Trump just cut that program. The Kentucky Center for Economic Policy built a tool where folks can track the impacts on Kentucky jobs and services from the White House and DOGE, identifying at least 39 separate and discrete impacts to the state, representing lost jobs, fewer protections for Kentucky workers, and less revenue for the state. The U.S. House held a hearing on workers' compensation for federal workers where Republicans said the benefits were, quote, overly generous. The National Association of Letter Carriers president, Brian Renfro, spoke in support of the workers' compensation program. Florida's legislative session ended last week with some good news. A bill meant to roll back child labor protections failed to pass. McKenna Schuler reported on the news for the Orlando Weekly. That's it for our union updates. If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact, and we'll try to include it in next week's roundup. Also, as a reminder, there are some headlines that don't make it into the radio segment. So if you want to get the full Last Week in Southern Labor, you can subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm. We also did not get the newsletter out last week, so this week's newsletter will be a 2-week compilation. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.